Welcome to my channel. My name is Erica. I'm the author of the blog, The Simple Home Place, where I like to share all about simplified homemaking, which includes easy recipes, DIY projects, and natural living. Today, I'm going to share with you how I made over my KitchenAid mixer. Now, before we get into this, I just want to give you a little bit of background on my KitchenAid mixer and why I decided to do this. So I got married almost 9 years ago, and one of the gifts that I got, which a lot of brides I think get for their wedding shower, bridal shower, whatever, is a KitchenAid mixer. I was very fortunate that my husband's family all went in on it, and I'm super thankful for it. I've used it so many times. It is a staple in my kitchen. But the color that I chose was not my favorite. I chose I guess it's like a royal blue-ish type color. And at the time, I kind of picked all blue. I don't know why, but it's not really my style, not really what I'm going for as far as aesthetic goes. And did I need to do this project? Absolutely not. Was I terrified to do this project? Yes, because I did not want to screw up something so expensive, and I'm not going to replace it, so it kind of needed to work, and if it didn't, I was kind of out of luck. So I really wanted something that was matte. So I don't know if you've seen the Joanna Gaines, is it Magnolia, I think, at Target, whatever her collection is. She has a matte KitchenAid mixer that's kind of like a really dark forest green, which I absolutely love. I'm really into the more jewel tones at the moment. But when I went to look for a paint color, they didn't really have a green that really stood out to me. But I still wanted to go with the matte look. And so I searched through all the spray paint colors, and I wound up on this really pretty kind of a slate blue, almost like the color of my shirt. And I just fell in love. I had seen some mixers that looked like this. And so my vision kind of came from the color that was available to me. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. It is not perfect, and there are a few things that I probably need to touch up, but I'm really happy with the end result. So I wanted to share the entire process with you. I also have a blog post that goes along with this if you want to check that out. It'll be down in the description box below. But without further ado, let's get into how you can make over your KitchenAid mixer. So the first step to this project is disassembling your mixer. I chose to take that back vent off as well as the strip that goes around, and you'll see what that looks like in a minute. But that just helps you so you can tape things off a little bit better and that you can paint a little bit better as well. You can go a step further and completely take your mixer apart and take the top portion off of the base. I did not do that, just because I didn't feel like I had the facilities to do that. I watched one video where the guy, he hung the top part in his garage or whatever and was able to really get it painted nicely. That would have worked out really well, but I just don't have that space or anything, so I chose not to take it apart that way. But as you can see, I am taking off that metal piece right now, and I am saving all of the screws and putting them in a baggie because you really don't want to lose those, of course. And then mine had this sticker on the back. I don't know if all of them do. I'm assuming they probably do, but I needed that removed. And so I took the time to wipe it down and get all that gunk off. That took a little bit of time because I ran out of my lemon essential oil. And even if you're not into essential oils, I'm telling you that works amazing. But I was able to scrape all of that residue off, and then I gave it a really good clean just to get any grease and grime. Obviously, I've never taken this apart. I've had this mixer for almost 9 years, and I've never taken it apart and did this full clean. Of course, I clean it. But anyway, this is just going to prep it for the next step, and we'll have to do another clean after that. But it's nice to get all the grease and grime and everything off of it before you start. So then I am removing this back piece. I already said that, but this is going to expose the motor, and you're going to want to cover that, and I will show that here in a little bit. But now we are going to move on to sanding. I have 400 grit sandpaper, and really the goal is to just remove the shine.
I'm not looking to take it down to bare metal or anything, but this is just going to help the primer and the paint and everything stick. And this takes probably the longest. I mean, painting does take a long time, just mostly because you have to wait in between coats. But this is really crucial. You want to make sure all of that shine is off, and that's just going to give you a really good base to get a good finish for your mixer. As you can see, this part gets a little bit messy, so you might want to wear gloves. I didn't. I really should, because I feel like I always forget that step. But I am just making sure I get all the cracks and crevices, and then I'm going to take it and wipe it down again, because you want to get all of that dust off. You don't want any dust particles on there, because when you go to spray it and prime it, you don't want any of that getting stuck underneath the paint. So now I brought it inside and giving it a really good clean. I think this is just with a Clorox wipe, just to really make sure I get all of that dust off. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step in just a second. Okay, the next part is really making sure that we are taping sections off that we don't want to paint. The biggest part of this is your motor, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm really taking my time to get that covered up. I tore a plastic bag apart, and then I'm using some painter's tape, and I'm really making sure that I cover that up. And then I'm also taking the cord and bunching that up and taping it up so that that doesn't get any paint on it either. And then I just kind of taped it up, and this worked really well. It's secured and it's out of the way, and I'm not worried about any paint getting in the motor, because I really didn't want to screw this up. I also taped off that stem, I guess, where you put the attachments, and then I'm going to tape off this metal section, and I will be doing something with that towards the end, but for now I need it to be taped off. I also taped off the levers, but I'm leaving the knobs exposed. You can kind of see that there, and it all makes sense, but tape up really well those moving parts, the motor, and just take your time, because it would be a big mistake, an expensive mistake, if you ruined your mixer by not taking care of those. So make sure you take your time with the taping, and then the next step will be priming. I do quickly want to mention that I did shove a plastic bag and some tape in that portion where it opens up, I guess. I don't know what you would call that. That is one thing that at the end I wish that I would have painted, because it still is the original color, and something that I'm going to have to go back in and fix, but it's fine for now. I also did the same thing here. This is where, if you had any attachments, there's a moving part in there, and so I wanted to make sure that was covered as well, so no paint got in there. And again, just taking my time with the taping. Now onto the fun part, and the first step in the painting process is to prime your mixer, and I'm using this Rust-Oleum matte primer, and I will have all of the products linked down below. I also have a blog post if you want to check that out. I go into depth in there, but the goal is just to cover the original color. Now I'm going from dark to a lighter color, so that's why I'm using a white primer. If you have a light mixer and you're going for a darker color, you might want to use a gray primer. I'm not sure if they have that. I'm assuming they do, but you want a darker primer probably. I ended up doing, I think, 2 coats, maybe 2.5 coats of this primer, giving it the allotted time that it said on the can to dry in between coats, but I just wanted to give it a nice base for spray painting it so that the original color wouldn't show through and that I would get an even color with my spray paint. So during the priming and painting process, you're bound to get some accumulation of that primer or paint. And in this case, I did decide to go in with that 400 grit sandpaper and very lightly go in and sand that down so that I had a really smooth base, because I didn't want any of those bubbles or texture to show through once I painted the spray paint. So I did take the time once it was dried to go ahead and smooth those portions out. Now I will say that I did this over the course of probably 3 days, where I primed one day, I prepped and primed one day, painted the next, and then sealed the third day. I really, like I said, wanted to take my time on this and do it right, and in the end, it really paid off. So I would suggest that to you as well. Make sure you're following all of the instructions on the primer, the paint, and the sealer, and just taking your time. So here I'm just making sure I got all of those little texture pieces before I move on to the next step. All right, so now I'm prepping it for paint. And as you saw, I left those knobs uncovered because I wanted them to be white. Now I'm just covering them so that I can leave them white and then paint the rest of the mixer. I'm also going to leave that little screw white, and then I'm going to leave the tape on everything else. But I wanted those couple little details to remain white. So that is what I'm prepping right now. Now it's on to paint, and what I am using is the Behr Premium chalk paint in matte, and the color is gingham. Now I'm just making sure that I'm doing even strokes and getting as best coverage as I can. I did end up doing about 2.5 coats of this, 2 full coats, and then a third to make sure I got all the little nooks and crannies. And I also moved the top down so that I could get anywhere in the back that I missed. So you want to make sure that you do that. One thing I will say, when you are choosing your primer, your paint, you want to make sure that you find something that adheres to metal, plastic, and more. That way you've got all of your bases covered as far as obviously the metal of the KitchenAid. If you do decide to paint the knobs, those are plastic, and so you want to make sure that you have a paint that's going to adhere to that as well. Again, on this step, I'm taking my time. I followed the instructions on the bottle as far as when to reapply. And then I also did go through with the sandpaper as well, just to make sure that I got all of those accumulations, any texture. I did mess up a little bit on this front piece, and you're seeing me kind of make sure that I got it smooth, but there is a little imperfection, but honestly, nobody cares. I don't really care. It does bother me, of course, a little bit, but it is what it is. And yeah, so that part is done, and now you see me removing the paint or the tape. Now, one thing that I will say is I wish that I would have painted that strip, because although the metal does cover it, you can see a few little pieces of that dark blue showing through. So if I do end up going and touching this up at some point, I'm definitely going to probably paint that piece as well. But now I'm just removing the tape from everything, and I am going to apply the final coat, which is basically a sealant, or it's like polyurethane for metal and plastic. And this is also matte, and I am going to go through and actually spray all of the metal pieces matte. I really like the matte look. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but the Magnolia line has an all matte KitchenAid, and I just really love the look of that, taking away that shine. For some reason, to me, I just think that looks really well. So I painted all of the metal pieces, or I used this sealant just to take that little bit of shine away, and it really turned out so beautifully. And if you're into that look, I would highly recommend that you give this a go. Obviously, if you want to keep it matte or keep it shiny, then don't do this step, but you will want to seal your KitchenAid as a whole regardless, but keep those metal pieces taped up. But yeah, this is the last step, and I'm just making sure that I got all that I needed to do. And now I'm just going to add all of the pieces back on there. This is the most exciting part. This is where you get to see it all come together. And let me tell you, I was so stoked about how this turned out. It is so beautiful. It really elevated the look. And I honestly don't even keep my mixer on my counter because I have very limited counter space. But if I could, I would, because it is really a statement piece. It is so much prettier than what I had before. And again, who really cares? But if you look at something enough, it's kind of like you want it to look how you want it to look, and this just makes it look really high-end in my opinion. And here is the final result. I'm so happy with how it turned out, like I said, and it just really gives it a totally different look, and I'm really pleased with how it came out. If this is something that you've been thinking about doing like I did for years, I highly recommend you give it a shot. All you really need to do is make sure that you are taking your time, following the instructions on the bottle. I know I've said that a billion times already, but you will get a beautiful final look. And honestly, one thing I was worried about is that it wouldn't wipe clean very well, but once you put that sealing layer on there, it wipes beautifully. It's not textured, it's nice and smooth, and so it turned out wonderfully. I hope this inspires you to give it a go. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. If you want to see more videos like this, then I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, gave this video a like, and I can't wait to share more tutorials like this with you. But thanks so much for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day.